though not atypical in this trial. For not only did the girls accuse Bridget Shape of attacking them in the usual way, they also claimed that she had come to coerce them into signing her book, that is, the Devil's Book, which is always a sign, the devil's handiwork. The examination by the judges, which also occurred on April 19th, was recorded by the court reporter, John Cheever.
The examination of Bridget Bishop before the worshipful John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin, Esquire. Bridget Bishop being now coming in to be examined, relating to her accusation of suspicion of sundry acts of witchcraft, the afflicted persons are now dreadfully afflicted by her, as they do say.
Bishop, what do you say? You here stand charged with sundry acts of witchcraft, by you done or committed upon the bodies of Mercy Lewis and Ann Putnam and others.
I am innocent. I know nothing of it. I have done no witchcraft.
Look upon this woman, and see if this be the woman that you have seen hurting you.
Mercy Lewis and Ann Putnam and others do now charge her to her face with hurting of them.
What do you say now? You see, they charge you to your face.
I never did hurt them in my life. I never did see these persons before. I am as innocent as the child on board.
Is not your coat cut?
Bishop answers no, but her garment being looked upon, they find it cut or torn two ways. Jonathan Walcott saith that the sword that he struck at Goody Bishop with was not naked, but was within the scabbard, so that the rent may very probably be the very same that Mary Walcott did tell that she had in her coat by Jonathan's striking of her appearance, that is, her spectre. The afflicted persons charge her with having hurt them many ways, and by tempting them to sign the devil's book, at which charge she seemed to be very angry, and shaking her head at them, saying it was false, they are all greatly tormented, as I conceive, by the shaking of her head.
Goody Bishop, what contract have you made with the devil?
I have made no contact with the devil. I never saw him in my life.
Ann Putnam saith that she calls the devil her God.
What say you to all this that you are charged with? Can you find not in your heart to tell the truth?
I do tell the truth. I never hurt these persons in my life. I never saw them before.
Tell us the truth in this matter. How comes these persons to be thus tormented and to charge you with doing?
I am not come here to say I am a witch, to take away my life.
Who is it that doth it? If you do not, they say it is your likeness that comes and torments them and tempts them to write in the book. What book is that you tempt them with?
I know nothing of it. I am innocent.
Do you not see how they are tormented? You are acting witchcraft before us. What do you say to this? Why have you not in heart to confess the truth?
I am innocent. I know nothing of it. I am no witch. I know not what a witch is.
Have you not given consent that some evil spirit should do this in your likeness?
No, I am innocent of being a witch. I know no man, woman, or child here.
How came you into my bedchamber one morning then and asked me whether I had any curtains to sell? She is by some of the afflicted persons charged with murder.
What do you say to these murders you are charged with?
I am innocent. I know nothing of it.
Now she lifts up her eyes, and they are greatly tormented.
What do you say to these things here, horrible acts of witchcraft?
I know nothing of it. I do not know whether be any witches or no.
No. Have you not heard that some have confessed?
No, I did not.
Two men told her to face that they had told her. Here she is taken in a plain lie. Now she is going away. They are dreadfully afflicted. 5 afflicted persons do charge this woman to be the very woman that hurts them. This is a true account of what I have taken down at her examination. According to best understanding and observation, I have also in her examination taken notice that all her actions have great influence upon the afflicted persons, and they have been tortured by her. Ezekiel Cheever.
After her examination, of course, Bridget Bishop was put in prison for a month and a half, and then brought to trial on June 2nd. There she faced mostly male witnesses, who, for one reason or another, felt that she had tried to coerce them into sin, or had accused them of trying to play supernatural tricks on her. One of these witnesses was Samuel Gray.
Samuel Gray of Salem, aged about 42 years, testifieth and saith that about 14 years ago, he going to bed one Lord's day at night, and after he had been asleep some time, he awakened, and looking up, saw the house light, as if a candle or candles were lighted in it, and the door locked, and that little fire there was racked up. He did see then a woman standing between the cradle in the room and the bedside, and seemed to look upon him. So he did rise up in his bed, and it vanished, or disappeared. Then he went to the door, and found it locked, and unlocking and opening the door, he went to the entry door, and looked out, and then again did see the same woman he had a little before seen in the room, and in the same garb she was in before. Then he said to her, in the name of God, what do you come for? Then she vanished away. So he locked the door again, and he went to bed, and between sleeping and waking, he felt something come to his mouth or lips, cold, and thereupon started and looked up, and again he did see the same woman with something between both her hands, holding before his mouth, upon which she moved, and the child in the cradle gave a great screech out, as if it was greatly hurt, and she disappeared, and taking the child up, could not quiet it some hours, from which time the child, that before was a very likely thriving child, did pine away, and was never well, although it lived some months after, yet in a sad condition, and so died. Some time after, within a week or less, he did see the same woman, in the same garb, and clothes that appeared to him as aforesaid, and although he knew not her, nor her name before, yet both by countenance and garb doth testify that it was the same woman that they now called Bridget Bishop, alias Oliver of Salem. Samuel Gray.
One another was John London, whose description of Bridget's peculiar gift for putting spirits into pigs has reminded at least one modern author of the character of Circe from classical mythology, who, of course, regularly changed men into pigs.
John Launder of Salem, aged about 32 years, testifieth and saith that about 7 or 8 years since I, then living with Mr. John Gedney in Salem, and having had some controversy with Bridget Bishop, the wife of Edward Bishop of Salem Sawyer, about her fowls that used to come into our orchard or garden. Some little time after which, I, going well to bed, about the dead of the night, felt a great weight upon my breast, and awakening, looked, and it being bright moonlight, did clearly see said Bridget Bishop, or her likeness, sitting upon my stomach, and putting my arms off the bed to free myself from that great oppression, she presently laid hold of my throat and almost choked me, and I had no strength or power in my hands to resist or help myself, and in this condition she held me to almost day. Some time after this, my mistress Susanna Gedney was in our orchard, and I was then with her, and said Bridget Bishop, being then in her orchard, which was next adjoining to ours. My mistress told said Bridget that I had said or affirmed that she came one night and sat upon my breast, as aforesaid, which she denied, and I affirmed to her face to be true, and that I did plainly see her. Upon which discourse with her she threatened me. And some time after that, I, being not very well, stayed at home on a Lord's day, and on the afternoon of said day, the doors being shut, I did see a black pig in the room, coming towards me. So I went towards it to kick it, and it vanished away. Immediately after, I sat down in a narrow bar, and did see a black thing jump into the window, and came and stood just before my face. Upon the bar, the body of it looked like a monkey, only the feet were like a cock's feet, with claws, and the face somewhat more like a man's than a monkey. And I, being greatly affrighted, not being able to speak or help myself, by reason of fear, I suppose, so the thing spoke to me and said, I am a messenger sent to you, for I understand you are troubled in mind, and you will be ruled by me, you shall want for nothing in this world. Upon which I endeavored to clap my hands upon it, and said, You devil, I will kill you, but could feel no substance, and it jumped out of the window again, and immediately came in by the porch, although the doors were shut, and said, You had better take my counsel. Whereupon I struck it with a stick, but struck the ground sill and broke the stick, but felt no substance. and that arm with which I struck was presently disenabled. Then it vanished away, and I opened the back door and went out. And going towards the house end, I espied said Bridget Bishop in her orchard, going towards her house, and seeing her, had no power to set 1 foot forward, but returned in again. And going to shut the door, I again did see that, or the like creature that I before did see, within doors, in such a posture as it seemed to be a-going to fly at me, upon which I cried out, the whole armor of God to be between me and you. So it sprang back, and flew over the apple tree, flinging the dust with its feet against my stomach, upon which I was struck dumb, and so continued for about 3 days' time, and also shook many of the apples off from the tree which it flew over.
John Launder appeared before us this 2nd day of June, 1692. And the oath that he had taken did own this testimony to the truth before us, the juries of inquest, Uriat in Curia. Bridget Bishop, alias Oliver, on her trial, denied that she knew this deponent, though the orchard of this deponent and the orchard of said Bridget Bishop joined, and they often had differences, for some years. Other witnesses included a minister who told of being asked by another parishioner to prevent Bridget Bishop from taking communion since she had so many unforgiven offenses behind her. And a couple of men who told of finding several puppets or little dolls made of rags and hog bristles with headless pins sticking from them. This is the kind of pin which you can see if you come to Salem, still in the case in the Essex County Courthouse. This obvious bit of evidence indicated that a curse or curses had been taken place and administered by Bridget on the dolls, and then of course by witch's magic, to her victims. You had a doll representing one of your enemies, and you stuck a pin in that doll, presumably your enemy would feel pin pricks as a result of your curse. Sounds rather preposterous to us, but of course, as I said before, and I can't say it too often, the people of Salem Village in Massachusetts in 1692 believed without question that such a thing was absolutely possible. Bridget Bishop's trial lasted the better part of a week, and on the 8th day of June, she was declared guilty of the practice of witchcraft and condemned to die 2 days later on June 10th. To George Corwin, gentleman, High Sheriff of the County of Essex, greeting. Whereas Bridget Bishop, alias Oliver, the wife of Edward Bishop of Salem in the County of Essex, Sawyer, and a special court of Oyer and Terminer held at Salem the 2nd day of this instant month of June for the counties of Essex, Middlesex, and Suffolk, before William Stoughton, Esquire, and the Associate Justices of the said court, was indicted, and arraigned upon 5 several indictments for using, practicing, and exercising on the 19th day of April last, past and divers other days, and time before and after, certain acts of witchcraft in and upon the bodies of Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam, Mercy Lewis, Mary Walcott, and Elizabeth Hubbard of Salem Village, single women, whereby their bodies were hurt, afflicted, pined, consumed, wasted, tormented, contrary to the form of the statute in that case made and provided. For which indictments the said Bridget Bishop pleaded not guilty, and for trial thereof put herself upon God and her country, whereupon she was found guilty of the felonies and witchcrafts whereof she stood indicted, and sentence of death accordingly passed against her as the law directs. Execution whereof yet remains to be done. These are, therefore, in the name of their Majesties, William and Mary, now Queen and King over England, to will and command you that upon Friday next, being the 10th day of this instant month of June, between the hours of 8 and 12 in the forenoon of the same day, you safely conduct the said Bridget Bishop, alias Oliver, from their Majesties' jail in Salem, aforesaid, to the place of execution, and there cause her to be hanged by the neck until she be dead. And of your doings herein make return to the clerk of the said court, and precept. And hereof you are not to fail at your peril. And this shall be your sufficient warrant, given under my hand and seal as Lady, William and Mary, now King and Queen of England, in the year of our Lord, 1692. William Stoughton. The sheriff, in a statement which is still visible at the Essex County Courthouse, along with the pins that I mentioned, recorded that he had carried out his orders. The first Salem witch was dead.
According to the within written precept, I have taken the body of the herein named Bridget Bishop out of their Majesty's jail in Salem, and safely conveyed her to the place provided for her execution, and caused the said Bridget to be hanged by the neck until she was dead, all which was according to the time which required, and so I make return by me. George Corwin, Sheriff.
After the Bishop trial, the record showed that the court adjourned for about 3 weeks, and at least one judge resigned and recorded his disgust with the entire matter. But on June 29th, the court reassembled, and justice, or what passed for justice, moved rapidly. 5 witches were hanged on July 19th, 5 more a month later on August 19th, and 8 more on September 22nd. 3 days before the last 8 witches died on September 19th, an old man of more than 80 years, Martha Corey's husband, who had accused his wife and then rescinded this testimony, was put to death by being crushed to death by fieldstones. This was the traditional means of execution for those who would not answer the questions in court or utter anything in their own defense. The reason that Giles Corey did this was that he was wise enough to know that anyone hanged or killed for witchcraft could not pass his land on to his heirs. So rather than disinherit future generations of Coreys, he remained silent and died a rather harsh death. There have been some rather grisly anecdotes come down to us of how, when he was being crushed to death, the stones were put on him, his tongue hung out of his mouth, and was shoved back in by the sheriff's cane. And at one point, when they pleaded with him to confess, and as the stones were crushing the breath out of him, he tried to open his mouth to say something. And they leaned down, put their ear in front of his mouth, hoping that he would say, "I am a witch, I am a witch." But all they could hear was him saying, "More weight, more weight." He was a tough old man, was Giles Corey, and he was not about to confess something he was not guilty of. Sarah Good, one of the first 3, you remember, to be accused of witchcraft, and the only one of those 3 to be tried, was hanged on July 19th, and uttered some rather interesting words on the gallows, which, if you've ever read The House of Seven Gables, are familiar to you, because they were immortalized by Hawthorne in that novel. When she was standing on the gallows with the clergyman, Noyes, who was pleading with her to confess and save her immortal soul, she replied, "You're a liar. I'm no more a witch than you are a wizard. If you take my life away, God will give you blood to drink." And it was true. Some years later, Noyes died of a hemorrhage in his throat. And it was from these events, from those words, the novelist got the idea to have Matthew Mall curse the member of the Pinchin family who was having him hanged to gain his land. By the end of the month of August, 1692, several responsible people, both in the Salem community and in the Massachusetts Bay Colony at large, had become concerned about the direction the witchcraft trials had taken. There were reports of leading citizens who had been accused but never indicted. Also, under the burning eye of increased matter, one of the great leaders of the church community in Boston, the unreliability of spectral evidence, which we've already discussed, was established. The death of Giles Corey had also been very much opposed and had brought the attention of the witchcraft trials to a lot of people. And then, almost as a final blow, the wife of the Reverend John Hale of Beverly, a woman known for her unimpeachable spirituality and piety, was accused of witchcraft, and immediately the entire colony realized that things had just gone too far. At this point, the governor stepped into the picture and prohibited any more arrests, and in fact dismissed the court. Several of those dozens still under indictment and in prison were tried, but only a very few were found guilty. For those, the government stayed the trial and execution. Finally, in May 1693, General Phipps signed a general pardon and an order for release of all those who had been accused of witchcraft, and they now numbered into the hundreds. A period of penitence soon began, with public declarations and confessions of error. In 1697, on the 5th anniversary of the trials, a general fast day of penitence was declared by the General Court. And in 1711, nearly 20 years later, the bills of attainder against the executed witches were reversed. What of the girls? Did they ever declare they were sorry? Did they ever seem to realize that they had been responsible for the death of 20 people? Yes, in the years which were to follow, almost one by one, they stood in their pews of the church while their confessions of error and sorrow and penitence were read. But it was too late. None of these, it must be remembered, brought back to life those 20 innocent people whose chief fault had been that they were, in one way or another, conspicuous, different, unique in the community of Salem, and therefore subject to notoriety. There are, of course, myriads of unanswered questions relating to the witchcraft trials in Salem. Why was spectral evidence ever allowed? Why were less than a dozen teenage girls allowed to hold a life and death sway over so many people? Was the phenomenon of hysteria an important factor? Hysteria, of course, itself is an interesting phenomenon and has been studied by psychologists for years. What is it, for instance, that caused teenage girls to scream at the sight of Elvis Presley, or in later years at the sight of the Beatles? Was that hysteria of the same kind? Wasn't a great deal of the evidence based on petty grievances and trivial misunderstandings? Were any of the confessed witches, and there were a few who confessed, really guilty? It's very difficult, if not impossible, to answer all these questions, of course. It is interesting, however, to study these trials, because they have a great deal to say to 20th century man. The people of the 17th century had no corner on bigotry, or being judgmental, or intolerance. The hunt for German spies during both world wars, or, as mentioned earlier, the anti-communist blacklisting of the 1950s, are variations of the same theme as the witchcraft trial. Whether the issue be race, politics, religious beliefs, or something so trivial as the choice of a favorite hockey team, the need for understanding is as crucial today as it was 300 years ago. If you've never been to Salem, you might wonder what remnants remain of the witchcraft trials in that city in the 20th century. There are several superficial references to the witches in the name of the high school athletic teams, the Salem Witches, a housing development which is called Witchcraft Heights, and various business establishments which use the name. Also for the visitor, there's the Salem Witch Museum, which, with the use of sound and light, gives a stirring and dramatic presentation of those infamous days. There's also the Witch's House, which is actually, tradition says, the home of Jonathan Corwin, one of the judges before whom the witnesses and defendants were examined. There's a plaque on the Masonic building